Hi there, everyone. This is Kathy with the DP2 team. We are so glad that you're here. Welcome. And I think the rest of the DP2 team is coming on camera as well so that everybody can give you a hello and a welcome. And thank you so much for being here. We very much appreciate your time. I don't know about the DP2 team and anyone else on the call, but I am guilty of every single one of those memes in that video that just played. Last time we met, I made a ridiculous analogy and called us the Brady Bunch. Right across from where I'm sitting behind my camera, I have this beautiful bookshelf, but it's not so beautiful because there's a lot more than books on it. It's my catch-all space. I've certainly made that face before when I share the wrong screen. So yes, I'm guilty of everything. And anyway, everyone, we are so glad that you're here. We very much appreciate your time. You are the reason that we are all here. So we thank you for your continued loyalty and support of DP2. We sincerely could not do it without all of you. So we're not meeting in person, but we will appreciate every opportunity like this one that we get to meet with you in person. And I probably should have done this by way of hands when we first started, but everyone can hear us okay by a show of hands. Just give us a hand raise that you're seeing the screen okay and hearing us okay. Wonderful, and we can clear those hand raises. So thank you very much, everyone. What we'll do is I will get started by just going through the 6 topics that we're going to cover today in version 25.1. We're very excited for this release and to share with you the new features that we have in there for you. And we're going to have this release available to you very soon. We've just gone through some of our final QA testing, and our plan is to get it to you certainly this week. I mean, if anything comes up during the webinar today, the team, may have to do a new build and do some testing, but that would only push it out a day or so. But the message for right now is that we are going to get you this DP2 version 25.1 release ASAP as soon as possible after this meeting, and ideally over the course of the next couple of days. Did I get that right, Brian? Are we on track for that, we think? Very good. Okay, sounds good. So like I said, everyone, what's that?
Sorry, I was on mute, but yep, we're on track. Everything you said sounds good.
All right, sounds great. So like I said, I'll just spend a few minutes here going through the PowerPoint presentation just so that I can share with you the new features in DP2 that I'm going to cover. Pat and I are going to cover these topics. There's 6 of them, but I want to let you know that the entire DP2 team that was just on screen will be behind the scenes the entire time. We would love it if this session is interactive, and that means your participation with questions at the end of each topic, or sharing an experience if you want to, or a comment. We love hearing from you. I think this community at large loves hearing from you as well. In fact, we've been asked recently, it's going to actually be the first topic that I'll cover, so I'll bring up the first item in my list here. We've been asked by many of you via the DP2 support box or a phone call, and we've been asked, what's everybody thinking about these third-party integrations with Skylab, Viesus, and Perfectly Clear? And now that we are officially out of beta, that's really the message that I'm going to share with you when I bounce over into DP2, is our out of beta messaging. Thanks to those of you who have tested the solutions. Some of you have tested all 3 solutions and then settled on the best vendor that really meets your expectations. You've told us that they're saving you time, saving you money, and probably the most important piece is that they're returning the high quality image results that both you and your customers expect from you. So really, really good news, and a big thanks to all of you who have tested those solutions and settled on one of those solutions. So the DP2 team is behind the scenes. Anytime you want to use your question box, give us a question, but better yet, at the end of each one of these topics, Pat and I will give you the opportunity to ask your question or share an experience with everybody on the line firsthand. Don't mean to put you on the spot, but it's certainly something that would help us keep engaged with each other throughout the course of the next couple of hours. So after I cover that topic in DP2, Pat's going to come on and she's going to share with you the new head alignment improvements and face finding algorithm updates. What we've done in DP2 for this release, version 25.1, is we've updated the head finding libraries in DP2, which should prove for you to give you better results in both head finding and your K-parse tasks. So Pat will share that new feature with you and talk to you about the improvements and where you'll find those in DP2. And then the third topic that Pat will also share gets us all excited. It's a new database information window. And this is a topic that we've been talking about, rightfully so, for 25 versions, about 25 years, hard to believe. And that's just making sure that your DP2 database is backed up on a regular basis. Your log files are backed up. You have a bird's eye view of your disk space, so it's really cool. Anybody with administrative privileges will be able to run a systems check using this window on any workstation. You can also schedule a check and a warning to come up on a particular box at a particular time so that that information is front and center. Consider that just another layer on top of your database protection strategies that you already have in place, I'm sure. So then the fourth topic will be, I'll come back on and I'll share with you our integrations. So we had integrations last time with the third-party artificial intelligence vendors. This time we have integration with SMS providers. We integrated, first of all, everyone, with Twilio and BurstSMS, but we would love to hear from you. You know, if you have another text messaging, and this is true text messaging application to person, you know, not using an SMTP service that has all the challenges and the hassles of needing to know who the carrier is and going through some translation to get that delivered, the email delivered as a text message. So this is true A2P communication with your customers right from DP2, a streamlined workflow. We're super excited to share it with you and even more excited for you to implement this into your workflow. But as I was saying, we've integrated with these two vendors at first. So if you have another vendor in mind, we would certainly be happy to research integrating with that vendor as well. And we'll give you the chance at the end of the seminar, a survey will pop up. Please just take a moment. There's only 4 items on there. Let us know how we did so that we can better communicate, do even a better job the next time we come together this way. But there's also an open-ended question in there that is asking you for your new feature requests, whether that feature be big, whether that feature be small. Now is the time to hit the team up with it because we're releasing this version. So what's next? We go to work for you. So please help us and make us go to work for you. We need your input. We rely on it, and we look forward to seeing what you are going to request for the next release. I'll also cover some improvements that we have in DP2 around workers and work queues. We have a few polls that we're going to put up over the course of these next 2 hours. Pat and I both do. And that's a form of engagement. It's a form of learning. And one of the polls I have will be when I get to that workers section, because you know what happens a lot of time is we introduce these awesome features to you, but we don't always know who's doing what, how you're using it, if you're using it. So that's very valuable information to us. So I'll pop up a poll at that time to find out who's using workers, how are you working them, just so that as a team, we can get a sense of how much, you know, workers and work queues are being used in your workflow. And then to wrap up the session, the 6th session, Pat will come back on the call and cover a very exciting topic, the KPL help infrastructure that is now in place. If your programmers are not on this call, please don't leave. Stay engaged in this session for the next couple of hours, but shoot them a text or something, and please tell them that they'll probably want to check that out, because it's a super cool way for your programmers to communicate with our programmers, let us know what they need sort of in real time. I mean, not necessarily, but they'll get that message, respond, and then there's going to be code in this KPL help system that not only helps you, but helps the DP2 community at large. As you know, one of you make a great request for DP2, and then everyone gets to benefit from it. So we'll continue that sharing opportunity and make your great suggestions available for everyone. So with that, I'm going to switch over into DP2, everyone. And I will just go off camera here, just so I can maximize your screen. And I'll switch over to DP2. And as I do this, the first thing I'm going to do, I'm actually going to close these windows up for just a second. And I want to ask you via a poll, so this is our first interactive way, everyone, for communicating with each other through this webinar. Let me launch this poll that asks you a question about how you're going to learn and remind yourself about these great new features in version 25.1 when you install your new version of DP2. Some of you install the new version right away. Some of you install it a little bit later. So we just want to make sure that everybody has a way, an understanding of one of two ways of getting to this information so that you can be reminded of it. So go ahead and give us your answer. Now we can't see, guys, who's answering, so your name doesn't come in on the answer. We just get answers back in the form of percentages. So I see those messages, those answers coming in, and when I get a high percentage, I'll just go ahead and close the poll. I will share the results with everyone. They're still rolling in. I see the big hitter, which is the right one. So I'm going to go ahead and close that poll now. It looks like just about 100% actually of responses are in. So thanks for that. And I'll share the poll. And again, this is just a really, I think, a nice way in a webinar to enforce some learning. I love your answers though, really. So the big hitter was open the What's New document in version 25.1 to check out it there. But I love the answer that says click around to find new stuff. I mean, that might be valuable. Could be a little bit faster maybe with the What's New document. Compare new right-click menus with old ones. Ouch, that would be tough from memory, but you guys know those right-click menus are a lot better than I do. And you may not be interested in new features. So we had a few responses across the board there, but obviously we have the majority of those looking at the what's new. So let me take you there just for another further reinforcement, if you don't mind. There's always a what's new in the contents, and that's where you'll find the vast majority of what it is that we're covering today. We're covering all these big enhancements that are in this version of DP2. And then the other way Some of you might prefer, in addition to this doc, going to the more detailed cumulative changes doc. So that's a hot link right there to take you to that. But this What's New doc is a great one to print out and share with all your operators in the lab. I mean, even if they don't use DP2 for these new features, I think it's a way of like empowering everybody in the lab to really know and understand what the DP2 team does for you guys behind the scenes and the new features that have hit the new release. So anyway, thanks for participating in that poll and letting us remind you how it is that you remind yourself of these new features. So when it comes to an update, everyone, about the integrations with Skylab, Viesus, and Perfectly Clear, let me share this information quickly with you because this is designed just to be an update. Thanks to Angela. Angela, I'm giving you a shout out. I hope you're there. Yeah, I do see your name there. So Angela said, how about a shortcut key for these process windows for any one of the solutions, Skylab, Viesus, or Perfectly Clear? So I'm going to open them up. I'm going to use a B for Skylab, and you can probably imagine why we used B for Skylab. For one, we were running out of letters, right? The S was not available. So when I say Skylab, I'm sort of reinforcing the B in Skylab. We used to open this processing window, everyone, right on top of your images, and now it's coded to open up on top of your order images window. Perfectly Clear got lucky. That's this next image that I have selected here. I'm going to hit a P on the keyboard to open up the Perfectly Clear processing dialog. And then Viesus got lucky with an E, not a V, but an E, one of the letters there. And I know those keyboard shortcuts will obviously become second nature to you very, very quickly. Probably the second time you press those buttons, you know, you'll be using those obviously very easily, and they'll become second nature. Just a really brief overview here. We've removed all of the beta logos and insignias throughout DP2. They were here on the processing window. They were also here on the analyzing taskbar, everyone. I'm off to the right now if you're following my mouse around. There's a setup dialog for each of these vendors, and they're loaded with information. I mean, there's so much help in the system these days. I think we've done such a better job over the years in DP2, and Peter V is going to get a huge shout out for this part of the system. He does a great job documenting processes, setups, operations. So there's so much help in there that, you know, we know it's helpful if you use help, of course. Some of us tend to use help at the tail end of trying to figure something out, and that's okay too. But our help in DP2, I just think, has come a long, long way. So, and again, this is designed to be more of an update for you on these vendor solutions because they were introduced in 25. We are officially out of beta. I ran this image with Skylab, and I know these days you probably have a lot of color-coded icons around your images on the top, on the bottom, but you can always rest your mouse, hover over any image indicator, and be reminded exactly, you know, what that is. In Skylab's case, just as a reminder, everyone, we use a command processor, a process commands window for bringing those corrections, those database values into DP2. We're not creating a backup copy. Skylab is just sending back to us the updates for your order images table, that particular record in the database. For both Viesus and Perfectly Clear, we use the worker and work queues to process those images, to communicate back and forth with both Viesus and Perfectly Clear. So I have those workers. Here's just a little preview for those of you that use workers in your workflow. You didn't used to have this detailed information on the title bar of your worker window. We weren't giving you, we were giving you the workstation and the instance, but we weren't showing you the thread. We were not telling you whether the worker, the opened or active worker, we weren't letting you know whether it was in a run state or a pause state, so that we're doing that now in the title bar. And we're also showing you the queue that that worker is either paused looking in or running looking in. So I'll be covering workers a little bit later, but just a preview there. For those of you who have, again, tested these solutions and settled on a solution that's running efficiently in your lab, again, you know, we thank you for that hard work. We know that it's hard, dedicated work to get to the best, you know, optimal image results that you possibly can. And of course, testing these solutions is part of your trial and error. But I can tell you that all three solutions are running in labs. You guys have settled on one of these across the board. So they're all running in DP2 production, and you guys have shared some, you know, great responses. You've shared your thanks to us for making these integrations happen as of version 25, and we extend that thanks to you for, again, the hard work that you've done. And then one other thing I want to show you, actually two other things I want to show you, is that in your event manager table rather, we have added a few events, and they're specifically nested inside of this action. Here's the actions section of this drop down. And all three providers have a section within here where you can set up certain events to trigger your order status to update to whether it's at one of the vendors, whether it's completed by the vendor. And I'm sure many of you are familiar with events in DP2 where you can set those up where the operator does something or something hits DP2 via, you know, a worker or a command importer, and that can be the trigger that that executes the action that's tied to this event. So we have those events in there for you. And now the last thing I want to show you before I give it off to Pat for her sections, I just want to take you out to our YouTube channel. And this is another reason I didn't get into detail about the third-party integrations, because primarily our message wanted to be we're out of beta, and thanks for your input and your help. But we do have out on our YouTube channel, we have a training video respective to each of these vendors, and the videos are very detailed. There's chapter marks in there. You can jump around. Each and every one of them contains the setup for each vendor, the operation for each vendor, and also the automation using commands. If you want your orders, for example, coming from consumers, as soon as they hit DP2, if you want to send those off to your third-party vendor of choice for processing, then that can happen very automatically. So I'll leave this session with that message on our YouTube training videos. And Pat, I will pass it off to you for the next topic. Actually, before I do that, I forgot, I would like to open up the line if anyone wants to raise a hand. I would be happy to open up your phone line on our end. If you have a question, if you want to share anything about your experience.
We did have a question come in while you were talking already, Kathy, about perfectly clear.
Oh, great, Brian, thanks. Did you want to address that? Did you want to share that?
Or I can read the question off.
Yeah, please, that would be great.
Was how do we integrate perfectly clear into our programmatic pipeline? We create the command files programmatically. Can we add the perfectly clear color corrections into the command file?
Yes, so what you'll find in this YouTube video is the third section in here will be all about automation, and we'll show you each one of these providers, everyone, has a command file in the system that is specific to them and the command that you would use to automate that. So the answer is a definite, a big yes, that all you would have to do is pass off the right syntax, the right variable for the, let me just make sure I know what they perfectly clear calls it a preset. Viesus calls it a parameter set. So you would just pass off the right syntax, the right command, followed by the preset or parameter set, depending on the solution, to be passed off, and that will be sent to that provider with that particular preset or parameter set. So good question there. Thanks for sharing that, Brian. Anyone else, or did any other questions come in,
There was
everyone?
another one came in too, asking about, instead of a desktop app, is it possible to run it as a web service? I could get load balanced so we could have one-to-N instances. So maybe if you want to touch on Perfectly Clear's local versus cloud.
Yeah, Perfectly Clear does have the local processing opportunity or the cloud processing opportunity. Skylab's processing, of course, does happen in the cloud, and then Viesus does run locally. So maybe some of those differentiations can help you determine a solution. We encourage all of you to get in contact. There's links on our DP2 setup tabs to contact each of these providers, ask for a demo or trial version so that you can test it out. And certainly we are available to help you bring these integrations to life and answer your follow-up questions or anything that you might need, everyone.
So it looks like we were actually being asked about it now in the context of DP2 being a web service. Just starting to get a little bit more complicated. So Matthew, I'm going to suggest you follow up with us in a service desk ticket, and let's talk a little bit more about what you're trying to do. I think we probably exceeded what we could probably get into here quickly. I want to make sure we fully answer your question.
That's great. Okay, Brian, thank you very much. We should probably switch topics, but don't forget, we're always here. You can also ask some questions at the end too in our survey. So, but Pat, I'm going to turn it over to you for the next topic, if that's okay.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Kathy.
Thank you.
I'm going to come on briefly to say hi and just kind of give you a sense of what I'm going to do. I'm going to talk about two different topics. The first is head alignment, and the second one is going to be talking about the new database info window, and I'll pause in between so we can ask questions. And I did realize, Kathy, I need to make myself the presenter and share my screen. Okay, so I don't know about that ChromaCam logo, if you can all see it. I don't know what that's about. But I'm going to go ahead and share. Hopefully you can see DP2. I'll bring that back up just to make sure you can see DP2. There you go. And I just want to revisit a little bit and say it's great to, although we can't be in the room together, it's nice to be able to share some time with you. And hopefully you'll find what we're doing really of value. We hope so. And again, I'll just revisit. If you have questions, go ahead and put them in the question pod. I will stop in between the two pieces to ask if you have any questions, and I'll do so again at the end. And I do have a little bit of a poll. So I'm going to take myself off camera and talk a little bit about DP2. There we go. So just anybody raise your hand. Let me know if you can see my screen. Looks like you can. Okay, great. Thank you. So the first thing that I'm going to talk about is the new libraries that we added for face detection. And the libraries that we added for face detection are both used in KPARs as well as used in head alignment. Most of what I'm going to be talking about today is relevant to head alignment. But I did, just as a reminder, or for labs or for someone who's not familiar, this is just the interactive, but this is what happens when we bring a face into either the head alignment workflow or the K-parts workflow, one of the first steps is the ability to find that face. So those are the libraries that we've upgraded. And during the process of testing those, we did a lot of research and testing on kind of how are those behaving and what's happening. And we made some discoveries, and we talked a lot about what's happening here and can we improve it. So one of the things that I'm going to talk about in this session is really some changes that we made to head alignment, but also some of the things that we discovered about how to use it. And I know when we go through this and we train people about how to use head alignment, we talk a lot about testing and all the kind of groundwork that you need to do. So I'm just going to do a really quick high-level reminder of the things that go into something like head alignment, because it's not a one-stop thing, right? We have a lot of different factors that influence the effectiveness of what happens next. So we do the libraries, and the algorithm finds the face. But for head alignment, there's a lot of other things that go into our success or our ability to make sure that that face gets put within the crop in the right way. So again, and I'm just going to very briefly remind you, this is just kind of a little lesson, right? But if you remember, in the crop and head alignment setup, we have both the crop and we have that face. The relationship between that face, having found that face, having found the top of the head, and understanding what's relationship to the crop is really kind of where a lot of this research happened and where a lot of the testing happened. So I just want to remind you that there's a lot of other factors, and encourage you to be thinking about, that there's a reason why we want you to have a large test population. There are reasons why we want you to be able to really quickly be successful, but it's based on some of the math that you have to do in your lab in terms of what crops are you using and what's that relationship between the face and the crop itself. I won't save that. So now I'm going to go into the cropping and head alignment, the head alignment and group balancing window, because this is really where we did the testing, and I'm going to kind of show you what the testing was about and the results that we found. And I think for those of you who are using this interface, and even for those of you who aren't, you may find this, this is yet another layer of thought about how to use this tool and get the most out of it. So I'm not going to do process things, and I'm not going to go step by step. I'm going to head over here to the head finding window. And the reason that I want to focus on the head finding window, there's two reasons. The first is that we did a lot of testing on this edge finding strength. And if you remember, or if you're not familiar, I'll describe it. This head finding strength is really a value that determines two different things. On one end, on the higher end, it tries to distinguish between the face or the head and the top of the head specifically in a busy background. On the lower end of the spectrum, maybe between 100 and 200, where you might have acquired a background, it's going to be doing due diligence to try to actually find the top of that head. So during the process of testing, one of the things that Dave did, and I'm going to show you these images, I'm showing them to you as order items so that I could add a little text to it, give you a sense of that range, right? When we talked to labs about this and some of the research we found, that there have been recommendations made for what part of this, what number is a good number and how do I determine those numbers. So 200 is the default. And at 200, with the new library, what we're finding is, and again, the library has found the face, and you're going to see it accurately found that face. Right? Oh, this is what it found that face. But now that next step, and this is the step we were testing, needs to find the top of the head, which is what it's looking for in order to be able to understand where the crop is and where to put that head in relationship to the crop. So this was 200. And this is Dave Tillman, by the way. What Dave was doing during his testing was going up and down in that scale to try to, begin to develop some sense of where does it lie. And remembering that the higher you go, the more it's going to be looking at the background as opposed to the head. And here's 225 and 250, right? And you can see there's some differences in the type of information and what's being returned back to us. And again, these images are test images. It's not something that you would ever see in DP2, but it helps to illustrate what's happening. But as you go further down, we'll go to 150, you can see that now we're beginning to pick up some detail around that top of the head and beginning to understand a little bit better where that is. At 100, which is actually a recommendation that Steve made to some customers, maybe not everybody, during Steve Johnson, during his tenure with us, you can see at 100, it has significantly more, a better understanding of where the top of that head is. At 50, right, we're getting more information, and you can also see that we're getting lots more information. There's one thing to note, as you get further and further, we're getting lots of information, and you might think, well, maybe that's the better way to go. But the further you get down, right, the chances are increase that the head box, so to speak, or that area that we're looking at, regardless of whether it's an ellipse or a rectangular line within that crop and alignment window, the chances increase that it's going to make it, it's going to see more than what you want it to see. And of course, down here, you can see it's totally white. So this is just kind of my way and our way of letting you know that as you manipulate these values, right, this is 100, that may also then increase the effectiveness of your results in head alignment in sort of phase 2, right? Phase 1 is the algorithms, and the improved algorithms are doing a better job of finding the face. And now in phase 2 for head alignment, not K-pars, but for head alignment, what's happening is we're finding ways first in this testing, but we're also finding ways to help make it so that DP2, the algorithms that are built into the head alignment interface itself, are finding the top of the head more effectively. Now, the new feature that was introduced for version 25.1 is this option called Use Fill Color on Cut Screen Green Images. When you check that checkbox, what's going to happen is on green screen images, and this is a specific workflow, which I'll address in just a minute. On green screen images, essentially what we do in the background, it's not something you're going to see, right? It's not something that's the user would have any idea is happening. But in the background, we're adding, in green screen images that are already cut, we're adding a fill color that increases the contrast between the top of the head and the background, or lack of background, I guess, if it's already cut. And that's going to allow the algorithm to be more effective in DP2. So that, and I'll just show you this example. This is the behavior of the algorithm that's already been, again, it's a cut green screen image where we've applied that fill algorithm behind that portrait, so that at 200, we get exactly what we want, which is that edge. So that in the top edge, and again, that's in relationship to the crop. And I do want to kind of just one little sort of piece of this that I want to talk about just briefly, so that I kind of can give you that whole picture. And that is, when you are deciding about how you want this to behave, there's a couple of decision points that I want to mention that I think, as you're kind of considering what's this going to do and what's this going to be like and how do I want it to behave inside of your lab. When we find the face, essentially what happens is we locate the faces, and part of the process here is that DP2, the algorithm, is trying to line up all those faces, right? And depending on how how you want your system to behave, or the results that you want to drive for your customers, you're going to want to be thinking about that relationship between the top of the head and the crop, because hairlines are different, right? Hats are different. Hair is poofy, hair is, close to the head, and those are the types of things that when you see the results, sometimes a lab will come back and say, well, I wanted all the top of the heads to be the same, or I don't care so much about that the hair is different. Because as you go through this process, right, if you're allowing, and I'm just going to very briefly, if you're allowing horizontal and vertical positioning and you're allowing zooming, DP2 is going to be using not just the face finding information, but now also the top of the head information in order to be able to deliver the result that it thinks you're after. So I just wanted to kind of make sure that I kind of put the whole thing into perspective for you, because the changes that we've made are really about better understanding that edge finding strength, and also understanding that now, again, it's a very specific workflow, because you'd have to have the images would have to be cut first. And then once the images were cut, then you could go ahead and hit that checkbox and be able to use that in the background. Of course, you'd be able to use that fill color. And again, so this is just highlighting this one thing, and I'm going to pause, take a look and see if there are any questions, because I see the question icon is lit, but I don't. Brian, maybe you can help me out and just, let's see.
Sure thing,
Okay.
Pat. Or did you find it?
I did, yep, thank you.
Okay, go.
So this says, we have a mixture of group, sibling, and individual photos in our lab. Is there a way to ignore images with multiple heads, siblings, and groups, as the head alignment won't work on them? That's a really good question. So there isn't in the UI itself, and Dave, you could actually, if you want to, if there's something I miss in my answer, please let me know. So there isn't a way, as in KPARs, right, you can select whether it's multiple heads or single. In a head alignment, there isn't. One of the things that you could try, I mean, this is something where you'd have to test it, right? On groups, it's not going to work, right? Well, I hate to say that categorically, because you never know, right? But with siblings, when there's one or two faces, it should find one of those faces. But what you'd have to do, I'd have to think about that. I don't know. Right now, I'm going to say the short answer is no, which is what Dave says, right? Currently, there's not a way to do that. But we could use the information returned by the face detection libraries to allow you to do that. Basically, another checkbox. So that's a new feature request. Very good. And we'll put that on the list, right? There have to be a way around it, but it's a good idea. So thank you. And the second question there is, what fill color are you using? And Dave put the answer in there, which is white. So I'm going to thank you for the questions. Thank you so much, and thank you for the feature idea. I've got a little bit of a poll that I want to ask as I transition into the next section, which is about the database info window. So I'm going to just gotta find the polls, and I'll put up the poll. I think, as Kathy said, right? Wait, I got to find my poll. Where is it? There we go. So when we're talking about databases and database info windows, there's a serious skill level that goes into being able to do the things that we're talking about, that we're going to be giving you insight into in DP2. So I'm going to launch the poll, and just take a moment to go ahead, and hopefully you see that on your screen. If you can't see it, somebody in attendee mode, let me know if you can't see it. Oh, no, never mind, I can see it. The response is coming in. So thank you for participating in the poll. We're going to be talking a little bit about databases, but mostly we're going to be talking about insight into databases. So let's go ahead and close that poll and then share those results. And it looks like a lot of you are really confident. You know, we've got some somewhat confident, not at all confident. What's a backup plan? Oh, what's a backup plan? Definitely put a ticket in service desk. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and close the poll, and then I'm going to share my screen again. And hopefully I did the magic in the background I needed to do. And go ahead and start up DP2, because what I'm going to be talking about now is a database info window in DP2 that is designed to help you gain some daily insight into whether or not the things that you think should be happening in your database backup plan are happening. And this is, I said it earlier today, for us, this is kind of somewhere between a lecture, a warning, and a love letter, right? Because when you guys have challenges or things get broken, we really, our heart goes out to you, and we scramble to try to do absolutely everything we can in order to be able to, you know, help you recover what's happening. And if I did everything right, there will be, we'll see if I did everything right, because I've done this, you might imagine, I've done this a few times in the last couple of days. And it didn't come up. Dang it. Dave, can I force that window to come up?
Yeah, so go to admin system settings, Pat.
Oh, I gotta delete other stuff. Dang. I thought I got them all.
And then go down to where the type is database
Warnings. All right.
warnings right there. Yeah. Just delete that line. Delete that line.
Yeah. So I missed one. I thought I got all the rest of them. Okay, I'm going to restart DP2 because the warning is the thing I want to show you. This is really where I want my starting point to be. And I know you all have known me long enough that you'll forgive me. Oops, what happened with that? Huh. Let's see. Okay, that must have been something else. So you'll forgive me this little bubble, because there's one thing that I want to show you. This is going to happen when, there it is. This is what I was after. So when the first time that you launch version 25.1, you're going to see this warning. And if you're not the person who's responsible for databases or IT or whatever it is, and there is somebody associated with your lab, do a screen grab, right? Because what we've done is, one of the things that happens, right? As I said, we see, you know, labs that go through and, you know, really struggle to try to recover. And I think, right, that question is always, when we get asked, you know, how often should I back up? And we always say, well, how much data can you afford to lose? Can you afford to lose a day or a week or a month? And so what we've done here is we've created a UI and an interface, a window, that will allow you to kind of keep track of what's happening. It's not about, this window doesn't do the backup. This window doesn't set any of the settings. What this window does is allows you to see it, and it's going to allow you to build some warnings. So this is going to come up. And I'm going to show you kind of how to control it. Of course, I already showed you how to delete it, or how to bring it up again if you lose track of it. But so I'm going to show you that. Just click on the button. This is the help, and Pete, again, he's done a great job at kind of documenting what this window does and what it looks like. And I'm going to go through the window. I'm going to try to remember to talk about each of the different pieces. And if I miss something, I'll rely on Dave to poke me. I gave everybody Oprah permission to give me a hard time if I miss something. And I took like notes. You should see my notes. So I'm going to go ahead and close this window. And for me, it won't come up again unless I delete that value. But this is the database info window. And as I said earlier, and I'm going to continue to reinforce, this is not about things that we do to your database, or that we're doing things inside of SQL or, you know, SQL Management Studio. This is a reflection of what you've already done in there, and I'll continue to say that. What this is going to allow you to do, though, is set up some warnings. It's going to allow you to not only set up warnings, but kind of control how those warnings behave and who sees them on what workstation. So that's kind of what I'm going to go through now. And I'll apologize because suddenly somebody has a chainsaw going in the background. So, you know, pretty clear as you're looking at this window, you can see right up here is the name. That's just the database server. This is my computer. That's my DP2 server. This is the version. Now I'm running SQL Express or SQL Express. If I were running server, my screen might look slightly different. I might have some more options, and I'm actually going to bring up a screen grab that I did of Dave's machine because he has server on it. And, you know, if you have questions, I'm sure we can either look, Dave can share his screen, or we can look at it at the QA at the end, or in between this and the next session. So in the database section itself, we have the name, which is DP2. I'm not very creative when it comes to my databases. And then when I created it, which was in 2018, when you click on these, and it tells you this in the help, when you click on any one of these blue labels, it's going to bring up information about that name and about that server, you know, or the date created. It's just going to give you more information. And this is something that we've been doing, have done in some of our other interfaces so that you can see it. So I'll talk a little bit about recovery model, in that my recovery model is simple. This is just information that's being passed back to me from the way that I set up my database when I originally did it and with the way that I created it. It could have been full, right, included transaction log. There are some other, you know, so you have some, so if yours is set up that way, then that's what's going to be displayed here on that screen. My last full backup was none. Now, I've done some things on purpose, right, because I wanted to be able to show you those warnings, and I want to be able to kind of talk about what's happening. My last differential backup was none. I'm in a training environment. If it crashes, I'll be sad, but I'll survive, right? My data is not critical in the same way that yours is, and I routinely delete things. The size of my database, here's the maximum size because I'm on Express, it's 10 gigabytes. If you were on server, I think, what is it, 52 terabytes, right? And then the remaining database space within the maximum size of that data based on my database manager. And again, one of the things that I do want to mention as we're talking about databases and database files, this addresses the database info just for your database. It does not address, do you have a plan for the files, the artwork files, the product files, the order items, the jobs, your images, all of that information, all of the files that go into making a whole lab work well, are not understood inside this window. So you would need a separate or a different type of approach for that kind of thing. And I just want to make sure that that's clear. So as we look at the database files, right, there's the name is DP2. If I had multiple databases, which, you know, some labs do, then you would be able to see those in the drop down, because when we peek into what's going on, we'll see those. And if you really want to see that, then Dave can show you that maybe at the end or after this, after I'm done kind of giving you the overview. The file path, this is where mine lives. And again, I have this set up as it's straight, very straight. This is a standalone workstation on my laptop. The file size is 350, not much. Here's my available disk space. I know, isn't that terrible? And in fact, at one point, you may have to see that everything's lit up in red. I had every intention of getting it cleaned up before this workshop, so you wouldn't have to see that, and I didn't get around to it. So the log files, it's the same thing. If I have multiple log files, I'm going to be able to see that. Here's the path. The file size is 45 megabytes. And for the log files, there's one cautionary note that I do want to add here is that your log files can potentially continue to grow. So that if you're not backing up in a regular way, those could be kind of tough too. They could actually get enormous, but those can also be kind of tough to try to break apart in order to be able to do and to, you know, help you in a disaster scenario. And of course, I have very little available disk space. So this is the piece that I really want to focus on, and these are the warnings. And again, these warnings are based on our understanding of what's going on in SQL, right? The things that are actually happening in SQL, we're not changing. So the first thing is when am I going to run those warnings? When and how and where am I going to run the warning checks? So I have some options. Now, these are all things that were in my database. This is this workstation. So I'm going to choose that. Then I'm going to choose this instance, because I actually do have a couple of instances of it, and what time of day. So I had mine set at 8 a.m. And if DP2 isn't running at 8 a.m., then what will happen is when you launch DP2, it'll, you know, throw up the warning box as close to that time as possible. And in my case, you know, when I start up DP2 in the morning, because I had it set at 8 a.m., the warnings always come up. So, and then the last check run date, well, I deleted all the entries before I started this, except of course for the one I wanted. And otherwise it would show that one was the last time I ran this check. So these 4 options in here might be different if I were on full backup. So, and again, I'll show you that screen grab, but I'm going to say warn if a full backup hasn't performed in. Now, I'm going to say 1 day, and then of course, whoa, I must say F1 at the same time. So I'm going to say 1 day, and again, the number of days that you set this up for could be determined by a number of factors and how you handle it in your lab. And the question will again be, how much data can you afford to lose? Or are you doing transaction log backups, which they might be done in hours rather than in days. And in fact, that's what you'll see is on the screenshot that I want to show you, that Dave has that extra value, and that's set in hours and not days. So warn if a differential backup hasn't performed, and I'm going to go ahead and I'll just put 5 days in here. Again, this is all going to be determined by what's best for your lab, what kind of plan do you have in terms of how you're going to back your data up and so on, you know, how that's going to go. I'm going to say warn if the amount of database free space. Now, I'm just going to put 50 only because, which is fine because I know I have lots of space. This value though could be, you know, 20,000. Right, it really just depends on what your environment is, or it could be this, because this would be kind of skinny. If you're a fully functional lab, that's not a lot. But I want actually the warnings to come up. And then warn if the amount of available disk space. And I'll go ahead and what did I have, like 35. So those warnings then will come up. And the warnings in red will tell me that I've exceeded whatever parameter I set out here. And the warnings in black are just simply telling me. So I'm going to go ahead. I have no history because I wiped that out too. But I'm going to run that check now. And so here are the checks based on the parameters that I set. So your check results would vary based on what parameters you put in here, what type of database, and so on. And what type of recovery plan you have, whether it was simple or full, as an example. So that's you know, that's what you would see. And again, because this is a standalone, but you know, you would want to run those checks on the workstation if you were the database manager or the production manager, or you were responsible for understanding that information. And then DP2 would go ahead and pop it up whenever you need it. And you could, you know, obviously I know I haven't done these and I didn't do them on purpose, right? But it's telling me I have low available space. It's not like in the red zone, right? And so on. So this is our new database info window. And our hope is that you never have to go through this experience, that you never have to put your disaster recovery plan in place, that you never have to actually use it. We had a lot of discussion on the team about the whole concept of, you know, recovery plans and database windows and the databases and SQL, as opposed to an interface like this, which is just allowing you insight into that. And so we came out with just wanting to encourage you to have a plan, to encourage you to, you know, think about ways in which you might test your plan. That said, and this is why I said that, we want to make sure that you all understand very clearly that testing a plan means that you would not be testing it in your live production environment, that you would find a way, somehow creatively find a way to, and again, right, to test, is your recovery plan going to work? Are things going to happen? Are you going to know who has to do what and what has to happen, and so on. So with that, I'm going to pause and I'll go back to the question pod, but I'm going to ask you, wait, I got to find it now. And I do see that there's some comments. Okay, let's see.
So I'll come back online for a second, everyone, and just give you a preview of this next topic that we're excited to share with you. And that's our integration with our the SMS providers that we integrated with. Oh, no, sorry. Yes, that is the topic. Yeah, we're on session number 4. I was about to go back to session number 1. But yeah, it's the integration with our SMS providers that we integrated with right inside of DP2, Twilio, and BurstSMS. And this really came about, everyone, just to give you a little bit of history. In previous versions of DP2 and for some time, we've had, you use your email server, your SMTP server is set up in DP2, and you send email messages that way, and you may have been using it for text messages because that's what was available to you for sending a text message from DP2 prior to this version. But you sort of had to convert it all, and you had to know the carrier of the mobile device number. And there's just also, so that's messy, right? You know, having to know, let's say you're dealing with end customers, consumers, having to know their carrier, and plus there's just inherent problems with sending a lot of emails. Those can get bounced, those can look like spam. So having a clean integration using a professional service like Twilio and BurstSMS, letting them do what they do best, what they've perfected, and just enabling the integration within DP2 so that you can take advantage of those services. We're really excited about it, and I hope you are too. And please know that for any of these sessions, and I know you guys know this is not your be-all, end-all of this information. You know, we've talked about the help system. You know that we're always on the other end of a support ticket or a training request. So we want to connect with you all as much as we possibly can. So please use all those avenues that, you know, use the DP2 service desk to get in touch with us, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk through this workflow pretty quickly, knowing that it's just a high level overview. And you've probably heard me say this about several workflows in DP2. I like to call them sophisticated because the end result is just that. Whatever workflow we're talking about, you know, the end result, whether you're using events in DP2 or composite job generator, right? The end result is always really cool, really efficient, and really sophisticated. However, the steps that we have to take to put the right pieces of the puzzle together, you guys have heard me use these analogies for years. If you're tired of them, in the survey at the end, you're welcome to suggest another set of acronyms I can use or comparisons that I can use to best explain that, yes, it's a sophisticated workflow, but yes, it takes the understanding of setting up several pieces in DP2 to make it all work, but you're all masters at that. You've been there, you've done it, so this will not, you know, shake you or surprise you at all. There's just a few steps to go through. So I'm going to walk through those steps with you in here, but just know that we are here for you to work with you in person whenever you're ready, okay? So let me just maximize my screen space here. And I actually want to start, I'm going to go back to our YouTube channel just to reinforce this for you, because out in our YouTube channel via the help desk, via this link to DP2 tutorials and training videos in our YouTube, on our YouTube Kodak Professional page, we also have a video that's new up there which covers this topic succinctly. So it's one video that goes through all of the processes and steps that I'm going to walk you through now. So I just wanted to reinforce that there's help for you after this. We have chapter marks in the YouTube video so that you can jump right to setting up your service with either Twilio or BurstSMS, and then setting up your text template. We use our email manager, which can be used for both an email HTML file or a text HTML file. So we'll use that same thing. And then really the third step is creating an event in DP2 that triggers that that sending of the text message to the end recipient. But again, you know, this is just leaps and bounds above what we had available to you in DP2, using an email server to do it. just complicated, challenging, troublesome. And this is true application to person text messaging if you so choose to check this out and give it a try. So use that YouTube video for your reinforcement, but certainly we are here for you as well. Everything you need is pretty much right on this events taskbar, because it involves, setting up the email text message. That's where you're going to find the providers. It involves setting up an event, because you're going to want this stuff to happen and be sent automatically. It involves workers and work queues. Now, the only thing that's not here is your data. Of course, you're going to probably store these mobile phone numbers in either your customers table, your orders table, or your subject information table. So that's another necessary part of the piece, of course, a part of the puzzle rather, is where you're storing these mobile numbers and the country code. If you're doing business in multiple countries, you can store a particular country code so that putting the country code and the mobile number together gets translated properly for delivery. So I'm basically going to walk you through the same steps, everyone, that are in that YouTube video that I just pointed out on our YouTube channel. So I think we've also relabeled this for this version. I'm pretty sure we added the /text manager. It was previously just the email manager. Here, of course, is your email server, setup, which is great, by the way. I didn't mean to diss this whole opportunity, because it's really great for sending your email messages. And you know what else it's really great for is if you have internal staff that you need to send a text message to when your printer goes down, or when there's a printer error that needs to be communicated to someone immediately. This may still be your preferred way, rather, of communicating with someone internal. You know who their mobile carrier is. You don't have to use that service, because obviously it's a service that you sign up for and get a plan for. So I didn't mean at all to make this, sound, invalid or obsolete, because it certainly will continue to have value for you for sending some text messages, probably those where you do know the carrier of the recipient. I'm going to head over to the text messages tab, and I'm just going to expand the screen here. You'll find information for Twilio and BurstSMS. In the example that I'm going to run you through, I'm using a Twilio trial account. So even when I show you the text message at the end that gets delivered to me, because I'm using a trial account with Twilio, it will, my text message will say that I'm using a trial account. So yours won't say that, because you'll have a valid real account. So that's the first thing you're going to want to do, is set up an account with one of these providers. And then, of course, you need the stuff that makes the integration happen. So the account SID, the authentication token, the from phone number that's assigned to your account, and a default country code. So DP2 will only use this country code if you're not storing that country code along with the actual customer, whether it be in the customer table or the order data table. I think in my example, I'm pretty sure I store my credentials for this customer and the mobile carrier information in the customer table. I'm pretty sure anyway. I'll remember when I get there. You have the ability, once you're set up with a provider, to put a mobile number in here and test it. You can also do a verification. You'll get some help, which you can see here, which I just landed my mouse over that verify button. And for example, this will ask Twilio if the phone number is valid for receiving text messages, and the format number is a valid E164 number. So that's really what needs to happen, needs to be verified. This here is just for testing purposes on the setup screen, but you also have, I'm going to show you in a couple of other steps down the line here, you'll have the ability to do a verification to make sure that everything gets formatted using that format for every message that you send from DP2, but then obviously integrated with this service that actually performs the verification. We do have an integration on the screen here with Verifone, which is a verification service. You don't need to use this with either Twilio or BurstSMS because they do have their own verification protocol as part of their services. But we do have it in here in case we integrate with another provider that does not have the verification step process as part of their service. Then you might have a couple of different services, one with Verifone for verifying mobile numbers, and another one with a service that may not offer that particular part up. Let me go to the next step. I'll come back to this one, but I actually am going to point it out now because it's sort of a cool part for you at least to be aware of. And maybe I won't come back to it since I'm pointing it out now, actually. But we have this whole opt-out phone numbers opportunity. And with an account with Twilio or BurstSMS, if the recipient of the text message gives a stop response or an opt-out response, then Twilio and BurstSMS, they certainly know that that mobile number has opted out of future text messages. DP2's table here, this opt-out phone numbers table, will automatically update for you in those two instances. And if you get a call, customer service at the lab gets a call from a client, a customer saying, hey, no more text messages, then you always have the ability to manually, via the new button, add a new entry in this phone number. DP2 does an automated check to see what numbers, what values are in here, and you can rest assured that those messages will be blocked based on the opt-out phone number list that you see in here. So after your service is set up, you're ready to actually go to step 2, which is right next door here on the templates tab. Many of you are familiar with our email HTML formats, and you've set these up for your email messages. I started this process by using one of our generic samples. There's one in our library of generic emails and now text messages in DP2. And if you don't have this list, everyone, you can right click or you can click the actions button and you can choose any time to import new email text templates. You would just want to make sure that in the past when you've done some work here that you've created not only your own names for template IDs, but that the HTML file that is associated with this template is also unique because DP2 overwrites those when you install new versions. I'll walk you through the process of like using this generic text message. All I did was duplicate that. I'm not going to actually do it. I'm just going to tell you more of what I have done here just to keep this flowing and make it truly a high-level overview. So I duplicated the record, and when you do that, DP2 clearly tells you that you're duplicating the record, but not the HTML template file. So that's actually the next step. I'm just going to cancel that. I don't need a new entry because now I'll show you just a reminder of the quick process. Once you have created a new template ID, there's then this process of copying the one from that you're working with because you might like the format and you might like some of the syntax that's in there that's going to be help you to format your text message. And all you have to do is right click and do this copy HTML template file. And that's where you're given sort of an order of operation. Just make sure you have things in the right order based on your selections. And the template file that is associated with this record in the DP2 email text templates table is then completely updated with a unique HTML file, and you don't have to worry about that being overwritten when you get a new version of DP2. I know I'm talking a little bit quickly here, everyone, but everything that I'm saying is well documented in that video. Obviously, you can stop and pause and jump around from section to section. So I'm just going through things in the order that they're presented here in that video as well. So I called mine My Lab Shipped Text Message. this type value that you enter here will help you find it later, like when you're looking at it for the event that you're setting up, because the action that's a part of the event will actually be the text message itself, because that's what you want sent. It needs to be enabled. If you're using a carrier like Twilio or BurstSMS, you'll have to choose the right carrier that you're integrated into DP2 with here. If you want to run the verify, if you want to make sure that every mobile number is verified, before sending, you can choose verify. You'll want to make sure that is text is enabled. I think there's a tool tip up here. Check this box if it needs to be converted from HTML to plain text, which is helpful in the sending of text messages. And then this too becomes very important, but the DP2 developers, they put in on the bottom of this screen, everyone, they put in macros that help you fill these very important values in very easily. I already have the macro in place. I'll just point out to you where it is. We have a new text messages category, and inside of that, it looks like I am using my customer table. There's a macro in here. As soon as you select it, it's already in your paste buffer, and this is pulling from the phone one field of either the order or the customers table. That's right. You can use either table, and the macro is constructed in such a way where it will pull it from either one. And there's also a macro in there if you're using the phone two fields as well. So all I did was paste that into the to column. From the from, we have a macro in there for this for you too, thanks to the developers. It will grab the from number from your SMS gateway for this template, the one that you have set up in your setup for either Twilio or Burst. So these macros make it really easy. You don't have to mess around and format that yourself. They're already there for you. So I call this step 2. Step 1 was getting set up with your service provider. Step 2 is creating a new text template in this case. And then step 3, everyone, I just double clicked on it, and that opens up our HTML preview and working window where you put in your line returns, your breaks, your syntax, your macros, if you want to have a signature being your being a particular email or information at the bottom of the text message. Those of you who are familiar with this, I don't need to go much further, but I'll go a little bit further to certainly show you that you could use this integration with Notepad++. And as you are typing around, as as soon as you start to, I'll pretend this isn't here, and I'll type in lab, and obviously very easily and in a very helpful fashion, you'll get the matches, the entries as far as the field names and the table names that are pertinent to the information out of the DP2 database that you would like to include in your text template in this case. Remember, this is not your be-all, end-all to training, nor is the training video that's on the YouTube channel. We love every opportunity to connect with you, so call on us. We'd be happy to work with you on any or all of these pieces. So step 1 was integrating with a carrier. Step 2 was setting up this this text template. Step 3 was making your text look pretty with the words and the stuff that you want to be delivered in your text message. And then step 4 would be setting up the event. And I only went to this email text manager first. Now I'm at the event manager. I do already have a text message event set up. And what I'm using, for example case, is the order shipped event. So that means when the order status is changed to shipped, whether you're doing that via a barcode, manually. Maybe you're automating, you know, when something happens in the lab, the order status gets set to shipped. So whenever that happens, then I've set mine up, for example, case for that to be one of the triggers, or in my case, that's the only trigger I have here that would then execute this action. Execute this action. And in order to get your action in here, in the event manager record, you right click. Here's a list of all the actions. I'll just go to email. I don't think we have one in here specifically for text, and that's just because we're using the email manager for both the construction of your email HTML files and your text HTML files that get converted to text on the way out. And here I have, I pointed out this value to you very quickly when I was in that email manager and said that this value will help you find and organize the text message, which in my case is this. So by choosing that, that's what populates the thing that happens, the action that gets executed by a worker when this particular event is triggered. In my case, when the order status is set to shipped. So now, just to put the icing on the cake, let me pull up an order, or let me just open up my order data window, because this is a way that I can manually test it. So I could automatically test it. My status there looks like it's already set to ship, but I'm just going to manually test it by coming down here. This is new as well. Send email or text, send workflow email or text. And I'm going to go to my text that I know was labeled this way so that I know where to find it. There's my text message labeled My Lab Shipped Text Message. Are you sure you want to do that? I will choose yes. And sent one message is up there now. I'll just bounce out to my cell phone that I'm sharing on my screen here. And here's the text message that was just sent today at 2:26. This is what I meant when I was telling you about it before, that because I'm only on a trial account, then it says from your Twilio trial account, your live accounts would not say that. But here's my syntax, and the text message was delivered. So with that, everyone, that ends this quick overview, just making sure we have time for everything else that needs to be covered today. We have 2 more sessions left. So with that, I'd like to pause and see if any questions came in, see if anybody wants me to open up their phone line. If you wanted to ask a question live, we'd be happy to do that. I just need to find my...
Penny has her hand raised.
Let me see, attendees. Yeah, let me go to you. I think you said, did you say Penny, Brian?
That's right.
Let me find you, Penny. I'm coming. I'm looking for you. There you are. All right, hold on one second, Penny, and I'll open up your phone line. It's open on my end. Hey, Penny.
Hey, can you hear me okay?
I can, yeah. Thanks for coming on. We appreciate it.
No worries. Thank you for having us. 2 quick questions. The one is, we currently kind of do this through the email way, where we go through a third party, data 247. It comes back with the, the carrier domain, and it gets sent through SendGrid, which actually is, I think, a partner or a piece of Twilio. So if I have everything already laid out to send it like that as a quote text, is it going to be very easy for me to just take all these items and just flip them and send them via Twilio instead of SendGrid? Or am I going to have to create all new events, all new products, all new everything?
I'm going to answer part of it, and then I'm going to ask Tom to reinforce. But it sounds to me like because you already have many of the pieces and parts in place that I just went through as far as the formatting of the text message, it sounds like you have an event When that event is triggered, it sounds like you have the right action in there that sends the right text template. So my short answer, but I'm going to call on Tom for the rest of this, is that it sounds like it would be pretty easy and you wouldn't have to redo too much to transition to this other workflow. But Tom, I'll ask you that question.
And while Tom's coming on, what I noticed was, because I was kind of comparing, you know, the old look of the event setup and templates versus the new one, and it shows in the template list, it seems that there's added a new column that says send via. So if you go to templates, go to templates and then manage. So now you have a column called send via. So right. when we upgrade, what will fill in automatically? Will it default to something?
I think our default has always been SMTP client until we've had these integrations with Twilio and BurstSMS in this version 25.1. So I'm almost positive in my cases where I have a few records in here set up for Twilio that I had to manually choose from SMTP client or empty, I can't remember, but I purposefully had to choose Twilio there, Penny.
Okay, so when we would upgrade, everything would, I just want to make sure nothing breaks once.
No, that's a really great question, and that's why I'm going to ask Tom for some reinforcement on this one.
So Penny, when you upgrade, I believe the ones that say SMTP client will actually be blank. But that'll be okay because blank will be the same as SMTP client, you know, the same as kind of what you're doing today.
Okay, so nothing would quote break without me going and filling in something.
If you do change one of those, if you take an existing one and change it to Twilio, for instance, then you'd have to make sure that you've got a Twilio account. It's you know, things are slightly different on the Twilio side. There wouldn't be a lot that's different here. However, the thing I would probably do first is take a look at the price difference. You know, they're both through Twilio. What's it costing you one way versus what's it costing you another way?
Agreed. And we actually use Twilio for our storefront already. So you know, we have an independent storefront, so we use that part for Twilio, and then SendGrid is the email version of Twilio, same company, and we use that also just for this. So we're paying.
So if you're doing it through events, and you're already triggering one of these events, I mean, you probably would be able to pretty much just change the send via column, making sure everything was set up, because your template's going to be the same, the way you triggered it's going to be the same. Now, if I was you, I would dupe one of those and play around with it. You know,
well, of course, yes.
But that's
so that being said, and that sounds perfect. So I mean, but where we will save is the whole. Right now, we're going out to a third party, a data 247, so I'm paying for that too.
Right.
So
you know, both of those.
Exactly. So that being said, you know, one of the questions I think I asked somewhere in between seasons here was, you know, I have East Coast, I have West Coast customers, Midwest, you know, multiple different time zones. So if I have a second shift working and they're releasing jobs, okay, which is releasing text messages, and it's 10 o'clock at night, is there any way to tell a worker to only work between these hours?
Well, not exactly, but kind of. Because a worker, one of the things that's in the worker queue, bring up the work queue there, Kathy, there'll be like a submit date or something like that. And that's the time that the entry was put in the work queue. Not that, the work queue. There you go, yeah. So one thing you can do is when things are queued, it'll be over a little further. If you queue it for like 8 a.m. in the morning, and it's 10 p.m. the night before,
Mm-hmm.
that will not run until 8 p.m. in the morning. It will not become eligible to run until 8 in the morning.
But how do you, because I have everything set up automated, how do you, in the automation, tell it to set it up at a certain time?
Well, somewhere you have some automation that's causing this entry to get in here. So that's where you would need to additionally provide this parameter of when to run. All the ones, if you're using our standard stuff, they all default to now.
Right.
So that whatever time it goes in is what time it goes in here. But there's a parameter that you can pass in there that says, you know, sometime in the future.
All right, I might reach out to you specifically on that, maybe. I think
Sure.
I brought it up before, so I'll look back to see where we left it. And I think whatever answer that came up with was it was going to kind of be manual, is where I think we ended. And so I basically had to every night remember to shut down, you know, workers at a certain time.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
that would be the manual way to do it. I mean, workers don't know how to come up and shut down at a certain time, but the work queue knows how to say that I can't run until a certain time.
all right, I will reach out to you. Maybe you can help me with that, because I have pissed a few people off by sending text at like midnight. So
Yeah, I wouldn't want one either.
nah, didn't go over well.
Well, thank you, Penny, very much. Appreciate you coming on and keeping us interactive and engaged with you guys. Anyone else have questions on this topic before we get to the next? All right, for this next one, you guys, I'm going to go into workers. So we have another poll for you. This is one where I mentioned in the beginning that we don't always know how many of you are using certain functionality. And the next session that I'm going to go through is the new improvements in workers and work queue. I'm going to go through it really quickly because for those of you that already work with workers and work queues, that's all you need is a little bit of a cursory overview. I see the numbers coming in. It's like a 50-50 split almost, you know. Some of you are not using workers anywhere in your workflow. Half of you are, half of you aren't. I'll close that in just a second and share it with everybody. Responses are still being collected here. This is very valuable information for us. I appreciate you guys answering these questions. Okay, let me just close that and share the results. I'm looking at the bottom one first, so it was less than half. It started out as half, and then you probably saw the other responses. I mean, we use workers. You might use them for incoming orders. Certainly perfectly clear, and Viesus uses the worker work queue workflow, processing events when you want to send, you know, to execute the action as part of an event that uses workers and work queues. And you might be using them for obviously something else useful. So thanks for sharing that. That's really helpful information for us, everyone, because we don't always get to know. We sit around and saying, how many labs are using this and how are they using it? So that's very helpful. I appreciate it. So what I'm going to do for this very quickly, because we need to save time for the last hot topic, I'm just going to open up the work queues table in the active workers table. These are not new, right? But there's a couple of new pieces. We had a workers column in here that showed you how many workers in the lab were active. And an active worker, everyone, can either be a worker that's in pause mode or in running mode. But we thought it was valuable to let you know out of those workers, how many are running. Mine's a 1-to-1 scenario, so nothing too exciting there. We did modify some right-click menus to make it really clear whether you want to start a worker on this workstation. This is really the hot item in this session, everyone, is our new Manage Workers window. I'll get to that in just a second. Active workers, there's been a couple of changes here, one of which is when you spawn additional workers from here, they get started that worker opens up anyway with looking in the queue. So this one it opens up in a paused mode, but you know that you can use these controls to either run or pause active workers. But what you couldn't do is start a brand new worker on a brand new box if that box didn't already have an active worker on it. So I'm going to jump right to the Manage Workers window. I think it's very self-explanatory, especially if you just see a little bit of a preview here. So again, I'm going to talk more quickly in this session than I did in my last one. You can also get to this Manage Workers window from here. Of course, there's help. Of course, there's tool tips. So take your time when you're reviewing this on your own in a little bit. You have a little bit more time than this. You can work independently on work queues. For example, I think I have, what do I have two of? I think I have a couple of main workers running down in the lower right-hand corner of my screen. I could choose to terminate that number of workers. Looks like I only have one there. And if I do that action from here, then one of those workers is going to terminate. Let's see, I thought I had one that had a couple going. Yeah, there's two workers running for Viesus. I could confirm that action, and you'll see those two workers close. You can also independently check on work. There they go. And you can also do it via workstation. So you're going to have all your workstations listed here. Your actions are under these cool drop downs. We really like the look and feel of this window, but that's really up for you to determine and say to us once you get a feel for it. You can view the workers, terminate workers, pause workers on a particular workstation and or instance. Now your instance is tied to the workstation that you have selected in column 2. So you have those same controls for workers on the instance. And then the other cool thing that you guys can do, remember you couldn't do this if you didn't have a worker already active on another workstation. You can use all three of these columns in concert with each other to go ahead and say, all right, I want this queue on this workstation, this instance on the workstation. I want to start it in running mode and I want to shrink it up. So that's a pretty cool new piece to this. We hope that we're giving you better visibility and better control of your workers, worker queues, how many workers throughout the lab are looking in a particular work queue. And in a nutshell, everyone, that's pretty much. There's also some controls down here for managing all workers that are running, view workers, terminate workers. That gives you a total count of workers that are running. The view options that would open up your active workers window, which you are probably familiar with. So with that said, knowing that we have about 20 minutes left, I'll open this session up to any questions, anyone, before we pass it off to Pat for the KPL help final and 6th topic of the day. I'm going through to see if there's any hand raises. The team can let me know, please, if we had any questions come in.
I'm going to be talking about KPL help. And this is something that has been asked for quite some time. And every session we try to do something for the programmer part of the world and to try to address some of the questions and other things that we see and hear. So, and this is just one, this is the best practices show that comes up when you hit the best practices button in the Programmer's Assistant. And I'm actually not going to go through the Programmer's Assistant this time. But everything that I'm talking about is if you are a programmer and you are working in KPL, this is probably something that you've been asking for quite some time. And in fact, in this particular show, in this particular presentation, we introduced script overrides, and it was a really important change in the way that we do things. And we, we looked at, and in this presentation, one of the reasons why it remains in best practices is because it's allowing us to kind of highlight the different types of changes, the things that will make it more fluid, the types of things that we won't clobber in an upgrade. But at the time, one of the things that we did say was, but I want a KPL reference manual and you haven't been that good. But what I want to say about today is actually you have been that good. And so what I'm going to talk about today in terms of the KPL manual is about what it is, what we're doing with it, why we're doing it the way we're doing it. And I'll go through some of the steps so you can kind of get a feel for how interactive it is. I think that you'll be as excited about it as we were when we saw it. I'm going to bring up the KPL help window using a shortcut. You could get there through the Programmer's Assistant. If you don't have the Programmer's Assistant in your drop-down menu here, then stay with us anyway, because I think it'll be good, kind of give you a sense of what's under the hood. If you do have it and you use the Programmer's Assistant, then you know kind of what's there and what has been there to date. So I'm using just Control-Shift-K to bring up the KPL window. And I'm actually gonna, it's interesting what's happening now. So here's our KPL window. In DP2, I hit the wrong button, sorry. I lost control when I was trying to minimize the control panel. So this is the KPL help window, and it's, again, I use Control-Shift-K. You could also get through it. There's a button on the bottom part of the Programmer's Assistant window. And what this is and represents is it basically it's an infrastructure, and it's an interactive infrastructure, which I really want to emphasize. And it's not a complete, like everything's done in KPL, but what it is, it's allowing you the opportunity to help us prioritize what gets completed and how quickly it gets completed. So I'm going to go through some of the steps here, and then I'm going to go through kind of some of the interactivity, some of the ways in which we hope that you'll be able to use this. And so I'm going to start with, and this is one of the things, so we've really started to think about, okay, what would a KPL manual need to say? And you're going to see a lot of this is under construction. One of the beautiful things about the KPL help manual is that, and I'm going to show you this, you can request specific items that you need help on, and then you'll be able to download and refresh and look and see if there's a new version without waiting for new build. So that what will happen is you can go ahead and make a request, and then it's an FTP scenario. We'll see the request and they'll develop the help, and then there will be a new version of it, which you'll be able to download, and you'll be notified that it's ready. So it's very cool. So this is both for programmers and for the people who find themselves programming but might not be a programmer by trade. And as I said, there are ways to record. I'm not going to go through this process here because I want to do it in another scenario. But you essentially, what will happen is you can come in, check for new help, download the latest help, reload the page, and that will become clear why that's more important in a moment. And then make a request for documentation. And we've also Tom's also gone to the trouble of really beginning to describe the development environment and talk about the integration with Notepad++, which I'll also be showing you in just a minute or two. And I want to just give you a sense. I'm going to go through some of these. I'm going to say they're not all populated, because that's really where you come in helping us prioritize, as you can imagine, with flow of control and all of the built-in functions, all of the built-in objects, constants, and keywords, right? The structure for that is in place. But the content behind all of those is not yet, because that's really the effort here was to create an interactive structure that we could use. But I do want to kind of give you a sense of some of the style, some of the things that are in here that will help you understand how this is going to be structured and the types of things that you'll be able to do. So in some cases, you'll see examples. They won't look like this in every case, but I wanted to show you this, and I'll actually be going through an example in a moment where you'll be able to try it. And when you try it, you can see it down here underneath. If you launch it, it'll show it to you in DP2 as a button. You can enter the debugger to test it, to take a look at it. You can actually change these to kind of play around and get a feel for it. So if I were to change this to a 1, right? Oops. And then I could go ahead and try it again, and you can see it's equal to 2. This example button will actually bring it back to the original example so that you can't hurt it. You know, you can play around with it. If I were working inside of this and I wanted to get that snippet of that piece of code that's actually useful and interesting to me, then I could do it and then copy it into the clipboard, so that I could then use it in Notepad++, or I could go from Notepad++ back into this help. And that's, in my example, that's kind of what I'm going to show you. So again, I just kind of give you a sense of what's in here, and how, you know, how we're looking through to make sure that we've structured all of them. I'm not going to go through all of these, but I do want to show you as another example of what this might look like. So here you can see, and again, we've got the little under construction sign everywhere, but you can get a sense of what information you might get from a keyword, right? And so on. So, and some of those are populated. So you have, but this just, in this context, is just an example of the types of things that you can see. So what I'm going to do in order to run the example that I want to demonstrate is I'm going to use the filter. And now there's a little bit of like finagling, right? Because clearly, if I were to set up and say, I want the help for this, Tom isn't going to be able to, or Dave, it's an FTP system. They're not going to be able to do it instantaneously. So we're going to do a little bit of smoke and mirrors here. Not really, because you guys know that's not my style. But so I'm going to do similar string, and I'm going to select it. And you can see here that right now there's no help for that. So I'm going to check for it now. I'm going to do this a little bit backwards because it's already set up on your behalf so that I could demonstrate this quickly and effectively inside this environment. So what I might do if I were normally, and I'm not going to do it because I don't want to bring it down until I've had a chance to show you requesting it. But if it's not here, the first thing that you're going to want to do is check for newer help, right? And then once you've checked it, if it's there, we're going to download it, which I am going to run through in just a second, and then reload the page so I can see it. But first, in this scenario, right, I'm going to say I want the topic a similar string, and I'm just going to put my email in here. If I could spell my name and talk at the same time. So that way you can be notified. And so this is kind of important, right? You want to be notified, and we'll let you know so that you know to go in. And it could be, depending on what it is, right? It could be one day, it could be a couple of days, but you got to give us a little grace there because we'll have to get used to it too. And then you'll just be able to submit your request and close it. So in this scenario, let's say I've submitted my request. I want to get this. So I'm going to go ahead and check for newer KPL help. This just tells me that it doesn't retrieve it, right? So I'm going to go ahead and check it. Oh, I don't know why it's taking so long. That should be instantaneous. Am I still, oh, there we go. So this tells me that mine is from 708, and maybe that's a GoToMeeting thing. And here's that there's new documentation exists. So I'm going to go ahead and close this window, and I'm going to download that newest help. And I'll go ahead and download it. So it was downloaded, and it really is that simple to get a new version of it. There's not a lot of it's all built into the way Tom did this, and the way the development team did it. So now when I reload this page, it's going to show me that help. And that's that in the, there'll be a little bit of a time difference between when I make the request and when you get it, right? Yours isn't going to be this fast. But this is, so then you will be helping us to give you the information that you need when you need it, right? And that's really, we want to make sure that we're, doing this in a way that's going to be the most useful for you guys. One thing to I want to note down here, you can see that it says see also matching similar string, and so we're constantly kind of checking and trying to provide you with information that rounds out your experience and your ability to do whatever it is you have to do. So in this case, I am going to run through these because I do want to just give you a sense of it. So I can try it, right? And it's going to say it returned 1, and I'm going to launch it, right? And which of course I showed you before. I could debug it in a case I might, step through it, and then it's going to return that button, right? In a case like this, I could change it, right? I could make this 2 and change it, right? And experiment with it and try it, right? Return 0, because if you look here, it compares 1 to 1, which is similar. Tom would have such a better explanation for that, I'm sure. So if he feels it's necessary, I'll let him do it later. But the reason that I wanted to do that is because, again, I wanted to just reinforce that. I'll go back to that example. In this case, I could also grab a snippet, which will give me that code, which is maybe the piece that I want, and I can copy it to the clipboard. So if I were working in Notepad, I can actually do this back and forth. And I'm going to go to Notepad now to kind of give you that sense of how much of a full circle it is. And I'm watching the time, and I think I'm going to bump up against the outside of our time, but I'll do my best to be a little bit more efficient. So say that I'm in Notepad++, I'm already working, right? And I'm kind of going back and forth, and I'm working in DP2, and I'm trying to test what I'm doing. And a couple of things that we've done inside of, or to improve the integration with Notepad++, which is kind of discussed before. Although I just realized something, I could have done it from here actually. I'm going to backtrack just a little bit and check it. Because I want to show you guys this. So inside of the description, the introduction, now in the development environment, I should be able to click here to launch Notepad++. Oh, well, okay, maybe it didn't do exactly.
That gets you to their web page to learn about it.
Yep. Okay, sorry. I thought I could launch it from in here. Well, never mind. I blew that one. Sorry, Tom. Okay, let me go back to Notepad++, because what I really want to show you is a couple of things. I want you to be able to, I want to show you this list now of,
it's under run.
Wait a minute. Run, thank you, sorry. Just all I need is one skip and I'm not lost. Is the ability to open up these macro files right from within Notepad++, and I'm going to open up my macros.txt. And also to be able to, down here, select KPL as my language so that now it's color-coded. And you can go ahead and, see the, the different colors for the different functionality in DP2. And we'll see if it's still in there. I can go ahead, if I were, obviously, I'm not going to add this to my, although I do have them in here, to my macros.txt, but I can go ahead and take that snippet and bring it right back into Notepad++. In addition, I want to just take a moment to hit that little help button. This was working before this meeting. It was.
So double click on similar string and try it again.
Okay. No. Okay, well, I don't know why it's not working.
Wait a minute. Double click on similar string and go up and hit that little red thing again.
Okay. There we go. All right. I just did it out of order. There you go.
Well, you selected too much. You selected a whole bunch of
the whole
stuff
thing
that we couldn't find anything for, but.
Oh, well. I know. So this is, again, I just wanted to, kind of give you a sense of how full circle it is, because this will take you right back to the help and it opens it up in the browser. So although you would have DP2 working as you were trying to develop and you were kind of going back and forth inside of DP2, you could be working inside of Notepad++ and be fully able to get to that help. And get to that same example and that same snippet and be able to have full functionality here as you would anywhere else. Did I miss anything, Tom, as I lost my mind there toward the end?
Well, there's lots of things, but remember we said we can't cover everything. The important part, I would say, is we spent our time building the infrastructure for this. We did not spend our time populating with a whole bunch of help. So don't look for a whole bunch of stuff already being there, but look for something where we can add to it every day, and you can get every day what we've added, and you can request things that you need to know about without waiting for new versions.
And we've got about 2 minutes, and I don't know if there are questions or.
I think some questions came in that the team was answering, Pat, so that's good.
Oh, good. Yep.
Pat, how about very quickly, just to answer what I I think it's probably Cliff asking the question, although it might be coming in under a different name. The permissions necessary to fire off Programmer's Assistant, don't you have to be a
Yes, you do, sure. Yep.
or the debug or something?
Yes. So in order to get to the Programmer's Assistant, you would go over to the Edit menu and the Programmer's Assistant. If you don't see anything below this level, then what that means is that in the admin under User, it means that you don't have permission for, I believe it's going to be database. Actually, is it admin permissions altogether?
Debug.
Debug, yeah.
Debug. So it'll be debug. The same thing is true, actually, and I should have said this earlier for the database info. You will not see the other way to get to that database info is from the database category. And if you don't see the database category, then you won't be able to get to database info. So it's the same.
Now, for most people in the lab, they won't be able to get to that users table either, because you don't want everybody in the lab messing around. So more than likely, if you don't see it, you should go ask the important person in your lab, you know, that knows all about DP2 and say, you know, I'd like to be able to see this stuff. Is that okay? And they could give you permission.
Well, then we'll give you an official huge thank you for carving some time out of your busy day. We know how busy you are, so we so appreciate you joining us for a couple of hours. And we certainly hope that the information was helpful and can't wait for you to get your hands on 25.1, and the team will be letting you know ASAP when that's available to you. It's our goal to get it to you as soon as we can, everyone. Any other messages from the team?
No, thank you. I hope you're all well.
Thanks, everyone. Take
Ciao,
care.
everybody. See ya.
Bye.
Bye now.